CRPN Central, this is Dr. Fox. Thank you for your continued support of the CRPN mission and CRPN Central. If you like this free education, please subscribe to the CRPN Central YouTube channel today and follow us on LinkedIn. If you'd like to join CRPN as a site or a sponsor, contact us today at info@crpaynet.com. Enjoy the show. Don't forget to share your voice for good and positive change in the industry.
Welcome to the Trials site and to the Trials Technology Training Session.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see what kind of innovation and improvement the sponsor is bringing to their trial. Let's do this.
I love the enthusiasm. Now, the first thing you need to do is set up your login credentials. Just like, oh man, that's funny. No connection. There we go.
Wow, that seems glitchy.
Okay, now with this credential, you can request access to the data system.
A credential? To ask for a credential? 2 more logins and passwords?
Then you just need to, oh, come on. It glitched again. Just a second. Hang on. I need to call tech support. Okay, they need to open a ticket with the sponsor to approve my ticket, and then I'll get my help.
Wait, what?
There we go. That's all you need to do. Now, let's start up with those other 17 logins and you'll be all set.
Are you telling me that with the study budget the sponsor gave me and the tight timelines of the protocol, we'll have to run this trial on this technology and workflow? There is no way we'll have the time with a patient in front of us to go through what you just showed me every time I need to enter data point. Not to mention the other 10 trials that I have to manage. I'm sorry, but that kind of tech burden is not sustainable to run this trial at our site.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid you don't have much of a choice. The sponsors paid a lot of money for these tech solutions, and you'll have to use them if you want to be part of this trial.
Well, you just made the decision easy for us with your decision. If this is the mess we have to manage to perform your trial, then I'm sorry, but we'll have to decline. Let's go ahead and schedule the closeout visit while you are here to save everyone the time and the money.
Tech stack burdens, good and innovative solutions gone wrong when they are not coordinated across the industry. Sponsors pay top dollar for amazing technology for every one of their trials and expect sites to willingly accept and adopt in performance, without considering the utter chaos that ensues when their secret sauce is blended into everyone else's magic bullets for an absolutely disgusting outcome. Sponsors, you don't bankroll an entire site, which means they will have to serve multiple sponsors with multiple technology expectations just to break even. Understand that as much as you would hope, sites do not revolve around you or your technology solutions, and know that as good as your intentions were, sites were not consulted prior to your selections and are not obligated to accept them. Sites, you may depend on sponsors for business opportunities. However, the decision of how to accomplish your independent contractor services and with what technology is solely yours. Write the SOPs, own your processes, and respectfully decline any technology solution that does not align with your quality or processes. If we listen to and understand each other, perhaps we can find that common ground, optimize technology benefit, and reduce this burden for everyone. Welcome to CRPN Central, the official podcast of the Clinical Research Payment Network. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel Fox. CRPN Central discusses the real issues with our clinical research industry to explore and identify mutually beneficial solutions for all of our stakeholders. The industry is jam-packed with amazing and innovative technology that can change the productivity of our research efforts and launch us to new levels. There can, however, be too much of a good thing when each individual piece of technology insists on its own systems, processes, and credentials. With so many passwords, portals, and e-thingies available in the industry, how may we reduce tech stack burden for a truly streamlined clinical research experience? Today, we will discuss tech stack burdens in clinical research, defined as accumulated costs, complexities, and inefficiencies correlated with the intersections of technological solutions throughout the performance of clinical trials. First, we will speak with an industry leader who is developing a comprehensive environment for industry alignment. Then, we will speak with an innovative pro who reviews thousands of pitches each year and assists with their funding and development. To maintain valid comparisons, both interviews will use the same questions, and my guests did not know the questions before the interviews. We will reconvene after the interviews, compare answers, and perhaps identify ways that we as an industry may alleviate tech stack burden for improved industry efficiency and productivity. Our first guest has almost 20 years of experience in site operations and research technology development. Lesley Freese is a voice of the customer and sponsor enablement representative at IQVIA Technologies. Now, she is working with stakeholders throughout the industry to develop IQVIA One Home, which is rapidly becoming a site, sponsor, CRO, and vendor agnostic platform dedicated to streamlining technology and improved efficiency for everyone involved. Lesley is an amazing and innovative voice in the industry, and I am so thankful she's taken the time to speak with us today. Please welcome with me, Lesley Freese. Lesley Freese, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Thank you for having me.
Would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. I've been in the clinical research industry for probably almost 20 years now. I think I got into it how a lot of people do. You just kind of fall into it, or you get some weird opportunity to participate in clinical research and you get that bug. It's a very infective area. I did a research assistant position in college at a cardiology practice. And then after college, I went into a study coordinator position at an ophthalmology practice in Boston. I wanted to get involved in the technology side of things and the different technology sites have to use and really make sure that we bring that site perspective to the technology. I've been in that area for about 11 years.
Sites are building their own technology, but I don't think sponsor procurement of technology has slowed down any.
No.
So now we have technology coming from sites, we have technology coming from sponsors, technology everywhere. I think you're working on a project that is designed to try to help streamline all of these technologies that are flying around.
I actually became a part of IQVIA through the drug dev acquisition. A lot of companies become who they are through a lot of different acquisitions. What happens with that is you have a lot of siloed solutions, which requires endless management of URLs and usernames and passwords and everything that goes into using technology. As part of a solution we needed for IQVIA Technologies is we needed to bring our own tech together. And so we started this initiative called One Home for Sites. And then once we started talking with sites, which is what my particular role is voice of the customer and sponsor enablement. And quite quickly, the lovely sites that we talked to were candid enough to tell me, great IQVIA, that's going to solve it for you. But I don't only work with IQVIA. I work with many sponsors, many CROs, which come with many different vendors. So we went back to the drawing board and said, how can we create a platform that's open? It's vendor agnostic, sponsor agnostic, site agnostic. Anyone can plug and play. And that's how One Home for Sites kind of grew to where it is today, where we have 28 systems in now and 19 partnerships with vendors outside of IQVIA Technologies.
Wow.
We've kind of created an environment where everyone can kind of play nicely together, play in the same sandbox.
It's the ultimate SSO. Everyone wants to make their own SSOs, and as a result, we just got a bunch of logins of SSOs. IQVIA is doing it a little differently. At one sandbox that everyone can play nice.
Yep, exactly. And that was the whole point. Sites are like, if IQVIA does it, and then every CRO does it, and every sponsor does it, and every vendor has their own.
You're not solving anything at all.
You're simply tracking single sign-on logins versus unique URL login. We really think of this as an industry-wide initiative. Really proud to see our industry going in this direction.
Today's episode is tech stack burden, specific to sites. It's essentially the amount of technology that sites, the end users, have to manage as a result of serving so many sponsors and so many different trials. I'm going to ask you a series of questions today, and I'm going to ask those questions to another individual. We're going to compare your answers to the questions to the answers of the other individual. Maybe we can find some alignment about what we can do to make things better and have an overall streamlined industry.
fantastic.
How do you define tech stack burden?
The burden is the key part. All of these tech stacks are siloed. What we find with clinical research is we're doing the same things over and over and over again. There may be minor nuances, but the bulk of the work that we're doing is very similar from study to study. There's a lot of solutions out there that are solving the same problem. The key part here is where the burden comes in. There's a lot of common data points that we're collecting in our technology solutions that are not filtered downstream to the systems that also share those same data points. The actual sites having to move those data points manually. We're not seeing the time savings that technology typically provides us. We're not automating a lot of the work that we're doing. We're doing the same amount of work, just in a different place. The second part is that the meaningful relief that technology is supposed to provide in our particular space, we haven't figured out how to master that yet. My first study that I had that I was managing on my own was paper CRFs. And then the next study I got was an early EDC. I didn't save any time with the EDC versus the CRF. All I had to do is, instead of opening up my CRF binder and check boxes on paper, I had to remember a URL, a username, and click boxes on a screen. So the time savings wasn't there for me as the site. I understand there's time savings on the other end for sponsors and CROs. You get data faster, you query it faster. But on the site side of things, they're doing the same amount of work, just in a different place.
If not more.
If not more. And then you're dealing with a whole other things. I can always open my binder. My binder's never not going to open. There's this assumption some people have that technology is just going to solve all the problems. But when you think about it, we're still layering technology over process. And if a process is broken in a manual world, a technology is not going to fix that. Furthermore, when you introduce technology and automation and things like that, you have to digitize your process as well. In a manual world, it may be a 10-step process. But in a digital world with technology, 5 of those steps are no longer necessary because the technology is taking care of those parts.
Processes first, then technology. Otherwise, you're going to have an incompatibility.
Exactly.
What do you think are the root causes to tech stack burden?
Everybody thinks that they have the special sauce. The way in which they're doing things and they're solving things is very unique to them. When you really look at things, everybody's doing the same things. There's no special sauce out there to solve this problem and not have tech burden, but have tech efficiencies. We need to come to that common alignment.
What is the impact of high tech stack burden?
One, sites are turning down studies because of the amount of tech that's being implemented on a study. 2, more time is spent actually managing the technology. I've even heard, when I'm speaking with some sites, they hire on like a system administrator role, which you would never think as part of technology a site would have to fund. A coordinator has so many things to do, they can't do it all. And inevitably, it's becoming more and more complex to run clinical trials with these massive tech stacks versus without them.
On a contract level, I know for a fact there are sites out there, if there are certain tech stacks that are utilized, they'll charge a higher overhead because they know it's going to cost more for them to manage it. There's tech stack management fees, which sponsors absolutely hate as an invoiceable, because sponsors are like, I'm hiring these technology vendors to save money, and now you're charging me more to manage them. And sites are saying, yeah, because it takes us more time to manage them.
A lot of that could be solved up front when you're reaching out to sites for interest in a study, having more information to give them on what technology you're considering. Say, hey, these are the different pieces of technology we're going to need for this trial. Tell us which ones have worked best for you.
That would be great to have that kind of feedback.
For the sponsors and the CROs out there, when you're going through the feasibility process, we can appreciate that you may not have vendor selection done already, but certainly if you haven't, take that opportunity to allow sites to tell you what's working for them. We've heard sites that say, as soon as I heard this vendor was selected, I recanted from the study because I've worked in the past. Getting that early feedback can even help mitigate that experience.
Most sites at your qualification visit, at your PSSV, that is the time to understand any other vendors, any kind of delivery vendor, anything like that. But importantly, tech stack. What's the tech stack? Any vendors, any ePros? What's your EDC? Do you have any portals that we have to log into? Understanding tech stack at qualification visit is absolutely critical. because honestly, you're going to get that before the budget, which means now you're going to have the opportunity to assess how hard it's going to be to run this trial.
And I do see the shift over the past probably 5 years where sponsors and CROs do seem to be taking into account the site voice in the technologies that they're choosing. I'm happy to see that there's more conversations being had around it. There's more transparency being provided. We are trying to gather information up front so that we can best set up the study for success.
So we've got opportunity costs. If a site hears about a certain tech stack, they just say no thank you. We've got a financial cost. Tech stack burden is very expensive for sponsors and sites and CROs. It's expensive for everyone. It feels in many ways that these tech stack burdens are increasingly reducing retention of employees. It's driving employees insane. We've got stress at the site. I'm sure we've got stress at the sponsor level. They said the average site has 18 logins per trial.
Yep.
Where do you think that is on a sponsor level?
Yeah, and especially with sites either buying or building their own tech. I know a lot of the EISF providers, you can provision people access to go get the documents that they need at the sponsor or the CRO. And then they have their own eTMF that they're bringing those documents to. Again, common data points. Hey, you need this document. I have it. It lives here and you want to put it here. We're still manually doing it. Maybe the CRA is not going on site and making a photocopying it or pulling things out of binders, but you're still manually moving things from one place to another. In a lot of other industries out there, the technology that they implement is automating the workflow of the process, not just having a tech that's here and a tech that's here and people in the middle still moving things around.
Yeah.
Technology moves a lot faster than we do as an industry. By the time we actually do evaluations of technology and we understand if it fits our needs and we go through the implementation process, there's probably another solution out there that's trying to solve the same problem.
That goes back to processes. If we have technology that's growing more rapidly than the processes that we can build around it, and we can't validate those processes, we're on this continual cycle. Maybe that's why we're reverting to technology over processes, because the processes can't keep up with the technology.
Yeah, it's a never-ending cycle. There's so many compliance and regulatory bodies that we have to account for, and it's not as simple as always turning something on and immediately starting using it. It's hard to keep up. You see something go by and you're like, oh, what's that? And you're like, well, I haven't even finished going through the implementation of this bit, and I'm already starting to look at something else. In our industry with technology, it's finding those meaningful ways in which we gain those efficiencies, because technology in and of itself is not the solution. You need process. You need to understand what data your technology is capturing, and then what are the downstream systems that also utilize that data.
The two questions to ask for technology are, what is the activation energy required, and what is the return on investment? Depending on how you answer those two, that is how you're going to assess adoption and retention.
One thing that when it comes to technology, expectation and transparency is not well communicated, especially when it's a top-down tech from a sponsor or CRO being given to a site. We have a site activation platform and we say, oh, here's this place you can upload documents. And if I'm a site, and we say, well, I'll just email them to you. I don't have to learn something new. But if you come to me and you tell me, hey, if you upload these documents here, I'll be able to see them. You'll be able to see what status is in, who it's with, how long it's been there. There's that value for you. If we both work out of this system, we'll both understand where we are in the process. But if you just tell me it's a place for me to upload documents, I might just continue to email them to you.
Sites identify portals, especially in sponsor tech stacks, as a significant risk to their organization, primarily because they do not have the opportunity to control users. The ability to request users from these sponsor procured systems can take months of time that completely paralyzes a site's ability to run a business and to perform its services. And so as a result, they just sit there and say, nope, it's too risky for me because I'm losing control of my own business. I'm not going to do it. I'm pretty sure One Home gives control to the sites as far as user access and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything in One Home that helps to control user access that sites can control?
One Home's free for sites, so any site can register. They can add their own studies. It's just a query from clinicaltrials.gov or manually just input the protocol ID and your site number. And then we've created this teammates space where you can invite your teammates that are working on that study with you. So you have a shared space. So you can link up your systems, you can put in useful links, you can manage your study contacts, you can use it as a shared place to manage tasks that you need to do for the study, and you can share that across your whole team. So that's really powerful in being able to share it with your team, especially when you're having site turnover and things like that. When I was a coordinator, we ran a fellowship program. I had to onboard 2 new sub-Is every 6 months. Having something like this would be incredibly easy. I invite them to the study space. They can see the systems that are being used. One thing that does come up is, can we make the provisioning process easier? So you said getting access to systems, especially when sites don't have control over it, can take up to 3 months.
9.
How can we potentially make that easier? We have a central location where these vendors are participated. They're asking, can I essentially use this also to request access to a system or request access to be revoked? So that's something we're looking at as we progress down this unified space. Where are the other areas that have commonalities with these vendors that we can potentially provide value? And we want to see if there's anything in that space that could potentially happen there. It's an industry initiative. Everybody needs to play in the same space. When we're looking at really reducing tech stack burden, it's having people sitting at the same table from different solution providers and working together to solve the problem.
How may we improve tech stack burden for a truly streamlined clinical research experience?
Breaking down borders, making sure we're all aligned from a security and compliance standpoint, but then finding those data points in which we can share that data downstream into the systems that have it. I really think that until we do that, we're going to continue to have this burden, because a lot of the burden is the duplicate entries of data across all of this different tech. And then really looking at our process when we bring in tech and making sure that the tech that we're implementing is enhancing our process, not necessarily just layering tech over a broken process. Find those efficiencies, really understanding the tech we're using and maximizing the benefit of it.
So when you say processes, whose processes?
Everybody's. You have to adjust your process to maximize the value of the technology. Reporting's a big one. Manual documentation. When you use technology, a lot of it is tracked and time-stamped and things like that. So what are those value adds, and where do they in the process eliminate someone having to manually do something or move something or document something? And that's what I mean by everybody. Sites, think about your processes, what you do. If you report up or you report down, is anything in your technology making that easier? Instead of sending a report to your manager every day, can they just log in and access the report? You have to find all of the benefits of that technology, what it allows you, find all the people that it benefits, and then implement that across the board. If you continue on business as usual, but now you just have a technology component in place, you're not going to maximize that benefit.
It's hard to get all of these different companies to agree on the same theory of process.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks they have their own secret sauce. And as a result, they prefer their secret sauce over someone else's, and they just don't want to build their business off of someone else's secret sauce.
The bulk of things that are very common have some standards around that. I mean, they've done it with the ETMF models and things like that. We're starting to have some more standardizations around different things, but also with technology, you want to make sure that there is a level of configuration, not too much, because then it's kind of hard to work around too much. A small independent site, maybe they're a private practice, but also see research patients, is going to operate very differently than an SMO. Top 10 pharma are going to operate different than EBP. Same with CROs. So their needs are going to be slightly different.
How in the world can you do standardization and unification across such a huge spectrum of users, from sites to sponsor CROs, everyone? They have their own different processes that work for their size of their company. That's something that everyone can benefit from.
So we just need to be more thoughtful in our implementation and our evaluation of technology, looking at general requirements against a manual process process, you're going to end up either building a really bespoke product that really only works in one way and can't accommodate anything else, or you need to understand, hey, these are some unique things we need it to do, but overall, the main solution we need is X or Y, instead of getting so nuanced into these unique areas. Because at the end of the day, we're really all doing the same thing over and over and over again.
If I were to hand you the microphone right now and I said, what would you like to tell the entire industry about tech stack burdens, about what it does to our industry, and how we can make things better, what would you tell them?
Think about all of the users that are involved when technology comes into play. Look at technology that solves your problem, but also understand if it impacts any other users. Understand what it is that they will be doing in that technology, what it is that you'll be capturing for data, and how that data is shared across the different technology solutions you choose for your study. That's the most important thing. There's multiple users of your platform. Make sure that it fits the needs for everybody that has to use it, and make sure that if there are common data points, you pick tech that can share those.
Understand everyone in the equation. Identify how your needs can be holistically resolved with their needs. And if we can all consider the needs of each other, we can consider the end goal, which we're all going toward the same place. We may as well try to work together to do it. And we create our technology around processes that are aligned to the needs of the stakeholders. Maybe, just maybe, we can start to reduce some tech stack burden, make things efficient for everyone, not just one side, and have a better industry overall.
100%.
Lesley, thanks so much for coming on to CRPN Central. An excellent conversation. I look forward to the live event where we can all come together and talk about this again. We'll see you next time.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dr. Fox.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Our next guest has extensive experience not only in site, sponsor, and CRO workflows, but also in investments, scaling, and overall innovation development. Laura Hilty has spent years working at the site level in sponsor and CRO collaborations, and now exercises her dynamic experiences at HealthX Ventures, where she assists with the development of tomorrow's innovations. Laura holds a strong and experienced voice in the industry, and I am so thankful she's taken the time to speak with us today. Please welcome with me, Laura Hilty. Laura Hilty, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Glad to be here.
Would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience?
Laura Hilty. I joined the clinical research industry back in 2010 and then joined a company that was in technology, CTMS for academic centers and cancer centers, and then helped the company exit, eventually sold to Advara. And then I gave up the product management side and did corporate strategy, put the two very different companies together. The first 10 years were really focused all on sites. The next 3 or 4 years were really focused on bringing in the sponsor CRO side, which is what Advara brought, and creating that kind of site sponsor connectivity to streamline the industry. Shortly after I left Advara, I joined HealthX Ventures, which is an early stage venture capital company investing in technology, in anything healthcare technology, as well as what we call pharma tech, but in the clinical trial operations space.
So from zero to nothing on a product, from start to finish, from client to client, sites, sponsors, CROs, investments, sounds like you have a lot of experience, not only in the clinical research realm, but also in the technology development and even scaling realm.
Yeah, part of my current role with venture capital is I help vet companies for which ones we invest in. I review like 2,000 companies a year, have a variety of perspectives at least.
In the world of clinical research, specifically, let's say site technology, I wonder if sometimes when those investors are looking at those pitch decks, they identify whether it's been a stress test based off of the end user, or if it's just an innovation from like a siloed perception of the person who has a great idea, but never really thought about the people they were working with.
So you have to understand the whole solution that's required to fix the problem. That entails not only who your buyer is, but who your users are, so that it doesn't stall out in adoption and success because your users don't actually adopt it or don't support it.
It's a giant tug of war. Sometimes I find that the sponsors are trying to solve a problem, but it's more of a shift of work. So they're solving their problem at the expense of site burden.
And it's interesting because a lot of pharma think that they're solving problems for sites, but because they're not actually validating some of that with the sites, then it turns into burden.
Today's topic is tech stack burden. I'm going to ask you a series of questions today, and I've already asked these questions to another individual. We're going to take your answers, align them, see if we can find some comparators, maybe some similarities, and then we're going to try to identify ways that we as an industry can address tech stack burden so that we can reduce it and try to make the industry actually better.
Perfect. Love it.
How do you define tech stack burden?
Technology that is intended to improve, but ends up taking more time, more effort, and more frustration than originally intended.
They developed the technology for a solution. Now, you can go process development, you can actually make things efficient, but it's much more challenging than just throwing a piece of tech on top of it.
Exactly.
Have you ever had those situations where you take a medication that causes a side effect and then you have to take a medication that solves that side effect? And before you know it, you end up taking like 9 pills for the one pill that you ended up taking before.
Good analogy.
Sometimes I feel like that is site tech burden. There was a good intention, but all these intentions are so siloed that cumulatively they create a larger problem than the problem they were intended to solve.
Definitely. I've been in tech for 20 years now, so I'm definitely pro technology. It's not that we should go back to paper, but certainly looking at the depths of how to do it in the right way so that it doesn't take us away from solving the problems that technology was created to solve in the first place. This is where our industry is really difficult to prioritize because you have features for sponsors who are the ones who are paying the money. There's features for sites, assuming it's a sponsor provided tool, potentially features for patients, and prioritizing amongst those various stakeholders who are all really critical. The unfortunate part is because sponsors haven't been as aware of the site burden, they have pushed more for their own features versus those of what would be required for the site to benefit from it. And of course, a company who makes their money off of their customers is going to listen to what their customers say and ask for. It's a big part of really educating sponsors so that they can partner better with their technology vendors to help solve for that.
Who are the victims of tech stack burden?
The users that aren't the buyers. Within our industry, while the patients do have burden, the number of systems that the patients get is much smaller than the number of systems the sites need to deal with. Pharma understands that the patients are critical to their enrollment, so you need to keep them happy as kind of the end. Otherwise, you don't have a study. It's been said a lot of times to be patient-centric. You need to be site-centric because that's the face of the clinical trial. And that piece has been overlooked because a site is being directly hired to do the work. Within our industry, the sites are the biggest user that has been overlooked.
And that seems like the site is one of the most vulnerable populations in the system because they don't really have a say in the development of technology because they're not necessarily the clients to the vendors. But at the same time, they're the end users that have to utilize the product to create another product for a mutual consumer, the sponsor. What are the root causes of tech stack burden?
A big cause of it is thinking in silos and being kind of myopic. There are certainly situations where laser focus is really important. Where it becomes detrimental in our industry is when people are only looking at solving a problem from a very specific lens. If you're looking at a single site on a single trial, then it can scale fine, and it can scale from the sponsor's perspective if they're working with many sites on a single trial. But if you flip it around and talk about a site and what a site needs to scale with many trials for working with many sponsors, then it breaks down. I'm not sure why it has not been as collaborative as I think it needs to be. The last 10 years or so, the site voice has really risen into sponsors' awareness a lot more than the first 5 years I was in clinical research. So I think we're slowly getting there. Now it's a little bit more awareness. I still don't think that when the rubber meets the road, many sponsors are going to sites to truly understand. I would love more sponsors to actually shadow sites. Just a once-a-year trip can do wonders for a lot of the sponsors who are making some of these technology decisions and operational decisions can go a long way to really overcoming some of that myopia.
I've offered internships to vendors, sponsors, CROs, just so they could see what a site has to experience as far as these finances go. I haven't had a taker yet. I think they're like, I'm good. Maybe ignorance is bliss in this case. It seems so ironic. You have to build a silo in order to be successful. But then we're sitting here saying, well, the silos are a problem when it comes to multidisciplinary innovation, where you have to rely on other silos to accomplish your success. Someone once said you have to build bridges between the silos, where you don't necessarily have to specialize in someone else's group and someone else's silo, but you have to at least have a bridge so you can walk across and talk to them and understand their level so that your silos can engage and interact. A lot of what I find is a root cause in tech stack burden is the assumption that something is going to happen the same way that you perceive it in someone else's silo.
You kind of have two different ways of innovating in this industry. You can build an end-to-end solution that does everything at once. Typically, those who are fully end-to-end and have the majority of a market don't have the drive to innovate as quickly as startups, for example, where it's basically innovate or die. On the flip side, if you have startups, they are point solutions because you can't boil the ocean and survive as a startup. What's needed in our industry in particular is more interoperability. So the bridge building, to your point. To do that, companies are more than willing to build the integrations. There's just so much tech out there that, particularly for the smaller innovative companies who are not yet the behemoths, they don't have the resources to just go build interfaces just in case somebody asks for them. So then kind of coming back to the call to pharma is to understand what sites are using, because there's not a ton of site tech options. There's 5 companies that are the vast majority of sites. If we can help sponsors understand what interoperability would be useful and what would both help the sponsor and help the site, and then help them basically justify the ROI and ask for it in RFPs for whatever systems they're using. I'm not saying that pharma has all of this money to go throw at all of these things, but I think from an ROI perspective, if you're able to take that longer term view and actually build an integration that can work across studies, I think that's really what's needed to push the reduction of the site burden. The answer is not just have sponsors not use their tech and only use site tech. That's not reasonable for them. Then the burden goes really high on their side as well, which can delay studies. That's not reasonable. So I really think it's the interoperability, but that's really on pharma to understand and drive the need for that. And then tech vendors will do it.
I always find when I talk to someone who's created this innovative solution, and this is going to solve the industry as long as every single site lines up and does it, I always look at them and I say, have you ever read a CTA? Have you ever tried to understand the relationship between a sponsor and a site? When you read that and you have an understanding of what is actually happening in the contract, how do you expect your technology to survive the industry? Specifically, now we're going to go into independent contractor world. Sites do what they want, and that's contractually their right as an independent contractor. So when you have all these sites that say, I'm an independent contractor, the tools that I use are my choice, my discretion, not my consumers. Now you're going to do this tug of war where it's like sites say, I do what I want, and sponsors say, you do what I want. Everyone does what they want, and they expect everyone else to do what the other person wants. So then comes the big question, how in the world can we achieve a level of standardization so that we can have this kind of interoperability?
So many standards. It comes down to understanding the problem that you're trying to solve and what's actually going to solve it, which I know is probably oversimplifying, but when it becomes a tug of war, I feel like that's what's missing. It becomes more of a power struggle of, I know my way and this is the simplest way for me, and the other side, I know my way and this is the simplest way for me, and being able to have more of an open conversation around both sides, because I do think the sponsor and CRO side is more complex than the sites understand as well. So there's dynamics there that are not just simple to solve, and I recognize that there's a lot there. So I think even being able to have an open conversation about what problems each are facing and then figure out what integration options there are. Without that, it is going to come from repetitive integrations. The more that you can integrate with similar systems across, the more people are going to want to standardize that to make it applicable to other technologies. I just feel like we're not even really doing that even as one-off enough right now to warrant there being standard. It needs to start with just starting to integrate and collaborating as much as possible.
The standardization concept could almost follow a similar cycle as the innovation concept, where you just standardize this chunk over here, everyone can agree on it, and then that's set, and you go over to the next set, and before you know it, over the course of cycles, you'll have a series of standardizations that were cobbled together over the course of time that everyone can agree on.
Yeah. And this is also where industry wide, we need to not do standards in a silo either, because there have been times where there have been very similar types of standards work happening in different stages. And because one is a paid for organization, one is not, or they have different payment structures, that they just have their own incentives to keep running. And I think that's where we really need to take a step back and say, we're doing clinical trials for the patients. We can't just make money on creating little pockets of things that work. This is really a larger mission that we need to take seriously and really centralize as many standards as we can.
They're not even standards anymore because not everyone's following them. They're just mutual opinions. And so may the largest opinion win. What is the impact of high tech stack burden?
I had done a talk on this a couple years ago. Sites filled out a survey on how much time they were spending on duplicate systems and data entry work. It basically came down to 8 or 10 hours a week was duplicate data entry. So that is a full day of work. If you think of a study coordinator and if they had an entire day that they could free up from not entering data twice or 3 times, they could be calling patients for recruiting, they could be double checking data quality, taking on another study. There's so many things that could be freed up. And I know there's a lot of discussions around study focus, and really a lot of it comes down to recruitment and retention. The more that we eat away the week with double data entry, the more we just take away from those critical components that are the meat and potatoes of the results of the study.
And is that per trial?
That was per person.
Per person. It's amazing how much waste, and by waste, I mean site effort, patient opportunity, cost in contracts, inflated waste in the budgets. So much is a direct result of tech stack burden that it should be in the best interest of everyone to try to reduce this as much as possible.
It's a good point on the budgeting side, because if you essentially have to account for duplicate data entry taking 20% of your time, you have to increase your costs by 20% of the time to make sure that you can pay your people and still come out ahead so that you don't go out of business and you can continue to do clinical research. From the budget perspective, if you're able to reduce that, ultimately, the ideal is to reduce all of the budgets by 20% over time. Ultimately, for the site, hopefully then they could take on another study and account for all of that. So basically, you're doing more quantity of work and obviously impacting the industry on a better level. And study coordinators would be much happier because they're doing more important work than just entering data. I know there's a large retention issue with some of the staff as well, with turnover and all of that, which totally makes sense. Nobody wants to be doing the busy work of just entering data multiple times.
And oh my gosh, it's every single contract. The sponsor or the CRO will send me a contract and there's a line item for data entry, 0.25 hours per visit, 15 minutes budgeted for data entry. Sometimes I go to them and I say, have you worked in this system before? Have you ever tried it? Tell you what, you go through a mock visit, you go enter data, and you tell me how long it takes you to do that. Triple, quadruple that time. Sponsors and CROs will underestimate or they will overlook the actual amount of time it's going to take to process the data. They're just saying, okay, one visit, 15 minutes, boom, there you go. That's our assessment. This is what you get paid to do. Sites sign the contract because they're strong-armed into this negotiation. And then after about 2 or 3 patients, sites do a cost analysis and they say, we are spending double the amount of money that we are getting for these visits. This is not ethical. We cannot feasibly do this to our patients. We're not going to enroll anymore. We just can't. We literally cannot afford to do this trial.
We're losing money off of it. Yeah.
For this data entry. And so then what happens? Well, the site deprioritizes the trial, enrollment doesn't happen, and sponsors do not succeed in their enrollment goals, and we don't have drugs produced. In the long-term horizon, cutting or making these assumptions of data entry and then having tech stack burden, those two put together actually result in completely failed trials.
Agreed.
It's heartbreaking. I sit there as a budget negotiator. Our you sure you want to not approve more time for data entry? Are you absolutely sure? This is your chance. Sponsor, oh no, that's our budget, RFP, oh, red line, oh, this is the maximum we can offer. Okay, see you in 6 months when you fail, every time.
I'm really curious how much time is spent on budget negotiation. If we could start with higher budgets that don't need negotiating, would that actually save startup time and money because of all the dollars and time spent on negotiating the budget?
Well, now you just touched on the entire why of CRPN. That is exactly what I do. CRPN reduces startup time by 95%. Sites always get paid what they need when they need it, and people are successful, period. So if you're a sponsor and you hear this, there are solutions out there. They're dedicated to making sure you succeed. It takes a lot less time, and you get your product on the market faster so you can save a lot, period.
That's awesome. And I promise he didn't pay me to tee that up.
How may we improve tech stack burden for a truly streamlined clinical research experience for all stakeholders?
A way for pharma to shadow sites.
Yep. Build those bridges, maybe. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think even a day where you can shadow different people. I mean, I don't think it has to be a humongous thing, but it can't just be a CRA who doesn't have the direct say into tech decisions. Get the head of ClinOps actually to a site, to a couple of sites. The fastest path towards making change is to actually just see it and understand it.
So we need our decision makers to sit there and say, we've been in their shoes, we've actually shadowed them, and we can now have an understanding of those end users' needs. And as a result, we can create a solution that can resolve everyone's problem.
People know pharma doesn't move very quickly, and there's a lot of reasons for that. They're huge and there's a lot of regulations. The call to the sites is to be patient and appreciate the voice so that they basically don't just stop because it felt uncomfortable to be complained at all day. This is just the reality that it's not a change that happens overnight. It is the fastest change. I guess that's also to say to pharma that don't be afraid of the discomfort that you feel for the day of shadowing a site. Overall, it makes sense for pharma companies to do that.
And I talk to CROs about this. A lot of times sites will sit there and say, well, this isn't going to work for us because, or you should fix this or because, or we need this to change if you want us to use it. And the CROs sit there and they say, look, this technology was approved 18 months ago in an RFP. It's a little too far downstream. We can't do anything about it. Otherwise, we're going to have to start from scratch and spend another 18 months getting approvals. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to use it as presented because it's too late to change. It might be good for the sites listening out there to understand that the intentions were good. And although they didn't talk to you 18 months ago to validate it, it's too far gone. You can't really change what you are experiencing right now. The only thing you can do is be a little more proactive, speak up, and then hopefully in 18 months get something better.
Yeah, the change likely won't happen within a study. It has to happen for the next study. And that's where those making the tech decisions, the more that they can gain an understanding of it, even if something can't change immediately, doesn't mean that the conversation should stop.
If I were to give you the microphone right now and I said, what would you like to tell the entire industry about site tech burden, about how you feel about it, and how you would like to see it change, what would you tell them?
Be proactive in collaborating and asking questions about the sites in a way that helps you understand the nuances of the problems that both sites are facing that also end up causing problems for sponsors. In the same way, collaborate with sites, in particular for stakeholders. Sites are the face of clinical trials to patients, so even sites can bring in the patient voice as well. The more kind of consistent transparency and idea sharing, the better. Overall, collaborate.
Listen to each other, read the contracts, understand your legal obligations and the perspectives of your stakeholders, build those bridges, talk and truly understand the needs of each other. And if we come together, talk, really understand each other's needs and work toward a solution that solves all of those needs, maybe we could put a little bit of a dent in the tech stack burden of our stakeholders.
Yep, agreed.
Laura, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central. An excellent conversation. I look forward to seeing how this aligns with the other interviewer. Maybe we'll catch you on the live event.
Excellent. I'll be interested in that too. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, thanks. I'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
Lesley has worked in the industry in site and technology roles for almost 20 years. Now, at IQVIA, she is helping to build One Home, which is building an industry-wide site, sponsor, CRO, and vendor-agnostic environment for optimal industry performance. The majority of the industry believes their secret sauce is the best in the industry. The uncomfortable truth, however, is that these solutions and information collected aren't really special or unique at all. Instead, we find ourselves performing repeated work with common data points and manually entering them into different locations. The best tech developed is worthless if it is layered over broken processes that are not updated for tech compatibility or the end user's inability to control their own access. To a point where sites turn down trials, they must hire dedicated system administrators, or they develop their own solutions that only exacerbate the tech burden of the industry. And if we break down the borders of our own biases, look at processes first and then compatible technology, understand the holistic needs and challenges of our stakeholders, and, when possible, create solutions that can share the common data points of our industry, we may progress toward reduced tech burden and an overall clinical trial experience in the industry. For over 14 years, Laura has worked within site, sponsor, CRO, and now investment perspectives. Now, at HealthX Ventures, she reviews thousands of pitches each year to help select the best possible innovations in healthcare technology. Tech burden results from siloed needs and myopic and unscalable decisions that do not consider the increased time, effort, and frustration that may project to fellow industry stakeholders. In the industry, the victims of these tech burdens are likely the users who are not the buyers, with the most vulnerable population being the clinical research sites, who may have to manage hundreds of independent tech point solutions across their trial portfolio, sometimes losing as much as 1 day per week to repeated data entry. To fully understand an end user's experience, the decision-making pharma representatives should consider shadowing at a site. The industry will not advance until all sides come together with mutual understandings, considerations, and repeated integrations. And if we have open conversations with every stakeholder, remain proactive and collaborative, and build the necessary bridges of understanding between our industry silos, we may work toward the development of truly innovative technology and an actual reduction in tech stack burden. Both of today's guests confirmed the prominent existence of tech burden in our industry, the establishment of harmful silos throughout the stakeholders, and of the duplicated efforts exerted to processing of common data points. Both of our guests also confirmed the critical nature of holistic and collaborative nature of successful solutions. And while Lesley discussed the importance of applying technology only with compatible processes, Laura highlighted the important procuring decision makers who shadow, understand, and validate their technology applications prior to study implementation. So, how may we reduce tech stack burden for a truly streamlined clinical research experience? With Lesley's focus on proper processes and Laura's target to bridge silos, our guests resonated across positive and effective principles. To properly alleviate site tech burden and apply real and successful innovation throughout the industry, we must focus closely on planning, processes, communication, and understanding. Know the processes and plan solutions only after they are functional and compatible with any applied technology. Have those open conversations with industry stakeholders, not as an afterthought, but as a decision-driving activity before it is too late. And understand the needs and challenges of everyone to truly eliminate wasted effort, streamline our industry's processes, and eliminate tech burden for everyone involved. Thank you for tuning in to today's very special Tech Burden episode. Whether you are a procuring sponsor or an end user site, please try to remember the problems you are trying to solve with or without technology may be much smaller than the industry's comprehensive challenges, and that your convenience may be at the expense of someone else's burden. Thank you to Lesley and Laura for taking the time to speak with us today. Thank you to our voice volunteers for participating in today's CRPN Short. Finally, thank you to my CRPN Central sponsors for making this episode possible. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time on CRPN Central.